old house Patty, about Cincinnati, what a team, what a team, what a team. Each man and lady, from 1 to 80, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.
Hello, Reds fans. Another episode of We Love Our Team. And today we are honored to have as our guest Barbara Smith. Barb is a native Cincinnatian and the youngest of 8 children. Congratulations, Barb. Barb is co-founder and president of Journey Steel, a self-performing steel fabrication and erection company established in Cincinnati in 2009. One of a few female and minority companies in this industry. Barb was invited to the White House to discuss regulations and their impact on small minority-owned and female-owned businesses. Among many recognitions, she recently received a 2024 Women's Business Enterprise Star Award from its National Council. More importantly to our listeners, Barb serves on the Cincinnati Reds Community Fund Board as its secretary and is a diehard Reds fan. Welcome to We Love Our Team, Barb.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Barb, great to have you here today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your Reds fandom and how it developed in your childhood years and how that made you a great Reds fan?
Happy to. I'm excited to be a part of this podcast. Love my Reds, and it started from birth. My dad was a Reds fan. He was born in 1918. As you already mentioned, I'm the baby of 8. And so baseball was in all of us, and it just stuck with me. So my dad was a diehard baseball fan. From his youth up, he played on part of the Negro League when it was not the Negro League. Like I said, born in 1918. So baseball was in my blood, in his blood. And I went to my first Reds game at Riverfront Stadium in 1972. I was born in 1965. I went with one of my sisters as my dad worked 2 jobs to make sure that we could be able to afford to go to Reds games. I went with my sister, and my fondest memory about that first visit was she was going to allow me to get a souvenir, and I wanted a flag. And she said, well, we're going to watch the game, and then, I'll get you a flag after the game. And so we went up to the kiosks because it wasn't, the whole stores at that point at Riverfront. They had the little stands up there, and they were real nice. And they said, and my sister said, she wants a pennant. And I was like, and I was pulling on her. I said, I want a flag. I want a flag. But, I wanted to go back to the game because I had a great time and I love baseball. So I also learned, my dad, mom also said, be grateful for what you have. So the vendor said, oh, do you want a big pennant or do you want a little pennant? So I'm thinking, I want a flag, but I was not, I said, well, if I got to get a pennant, I said, I want a big pennant, and I was sort of sad. And then he pulled out the flag, and I was like, yay. And so I learned, that was my first experience in learning that the flags are called pennants. So that was great. My first experience, my first Cincinnati Reds game, and I've been going ever since. But that's what got me started. My dad got me started. My sister took me to my first game, and I've just been a fan, and you can't keep me from the stadium anymore.
Your dad was a ball player?
My dad was a ball player. Like I said, he played part of the Negro League, but not part of the real Negro League. But there's pictures of him playing back in the day when, some of the like Shillitoes and different stores were sponsoring different types of teams. And so he played there. And so we have old pictures of him and the knickerbockers and the gloves that looked like leather gloves on his hand when he was playing. So, yes.
Great. Did he ever talk to you about the Cincinnati Tigers? They played in Crosley Field in the 30s, actually.
Yes, yes. Like I said, he inbred baseball into us. He talked about all of the Negro leagues, and that's how we found out. Like I said, I guess it was part of their minor league system, if that was the case. Like I said, he didn't travel a lot, but he played regularly, and so he talked about how Negroes weren't allowed, to play baseball. In Major League Baseball, but that didn't deter him. And he, like I said, he loved baseball and continued. He stopped playing. He had 8 kids, so he had to stop playing at some time and support the family. But he
Mm.
followed baseball from his youth up.
So what was the spread? I'm curious. I'm the youngest of 6. So what's the spread between the oldest in your family and you?
There is 23 years.
Oh boy.
Between them. Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
Wow.
I had 17. My oldest sister was 17 years older than me. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Boy, my sister is the only sister in the family. She was the oldest, and she's only 9 years more than me. So my mom had 6 and 9 or 10 years. So, Barb, did you play as a youth? Did you play sports, including baseball?
I did, and I played softball. I ran track, played volleyball and basketball, and I played softball because of my love for the Reds. I actually was better at track. I was fast, but back in the day, you couldn't play 2 sports during one season, and so I had to choose between softball and track. And so I actually chose softball for the first 2 years, and then the track coach made sure she recruited me and said, "You need to run track." I was a pretty good softball player. I wore number 15 because George Foster was my favorite player, and I wanted to play left field, but they put me at third base, and but I did play softball, and I was pretty good, but I was better at track. I was much faster at track.
Was his nickname Yahtzee, Jack? I know you're my fact checker. Wasn't his nickname Yahtzee?
I think that's right. I think that's right. I'll tell you, I really like George Foster too, and I think that to have a guy come over in a trade that didn't really think much about him, and then all of a sudden he gets in the lineup and just hit bomb after bomb after bomb and line drive. I mean, he was such a good hitter, and he hit line drives. And the year he hit 52 home runs, I mean, I think if he had been playing in Great American Ballpark, he might have hit 100. I mean, it's just,
Absolutely.
it's a little tough to hit him out at Riverfront, especially when he didn't elevate the ball a whole lot. He hit line drives, and yeah. So you imagined yourself for George Foster when you were out there playing softball.
I did, and exactly what you were talking about. He came over quiet. That's why he was my favorite player, and he never got his uniform dirty. And I'm like, he hit home runs. He didn't need to slide, but he was just quiet. He got the job done, and I was lucky enough, to be 9 and 10 during the 75, 76 Big Red Machine era, and the best 8 that ever taken, the greatest 8 players that have ever taken the field at one time. But George was my favorite player, and I think it was because he was just quietly getting everything done. And I was just always amazed. He never got his uniform dirty, and at that time he was the only one that had the black bat.
Yeah.
And he was just, his presence. He just got up there and got everything done.
He made that great throw in the '75 World Series too. He caught that ball in the left field line and just drilled whoever the runner was for Boston. But I just remember that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's when the third base coach was telling the runner, no, no, no.
Yeah.
And the crowd was so loud, he thought he was saying, go, go,
Go,
go.
go. Yes, I heard that story. Yeah.
That's really
How about
fun.
since George? Have you developed any favorite players since George, Barb?
I sort of keep a favorite player for 3 or 4 years. So after George, and when George left, actually my next favorite player was Eddie Milner during the 80s. And that was at Riverfront Stadium. And again, my parents allowed me to go to the games because I accepted the big pennant, and even though I wanted the flag, so I got to keep going to the games. And I remember being down there, I think it was like 1982 or so. I was a sophomore, and me and a girlfriend on straight A tickets. we were down there in Riverfront, and, you could just run around the whole bowl, at Riverfront. And we were down there early, and it was actually, for whatever reason, batting practice was happening. I guess the Reds practiced early enough back in that day that if you got in, you could see them practicing and not the visiting team. And so I remember being out in left field, and Eddie Milner was out there shagging balls or something, and we had our trying to get an autograph, and it was like, Eddie, autograph. And he sort of motioned for us to like, come on over. They were going in. And so we went to left field. So we ran all the way around, to the first base side, out of breath. And it was like, Eddie, you said if we came over here, you would sign it. And he was laughing because he probably figured like these crazy people actually ran all the way over here. And so he signed our autograph. And at the time, because he was from Columbus, and my mom, the church that I grew up with, they went to conference in Columbus, and she had met Eddie Milner's mom. And so I said, my mom knows your mom. You got to sign my picture. And it was an 8.5 by 10 that I got out of the bread or whatever, some giveaway at Kroger that they had. And so he signed it. And so he became my favorite player because he actually signed, the picture of him and made me run across, Riverfront Stadium. And I thank God. That's why I ran track. That's probably when I started running track.
Paid off.
Yes.
All that training paid off. You got the autograph. He was a good player. He's one of those guys you don't think about too much, but he was a good player. Here's the thing I remember about Eddie Milner. I was watching a game one time. The Reds were playing the Dodgers. Milner led off. He got a single. He stole second. He went to third on a ground out. He scored on a fly ball. But Jerry Royce was pitching for the Dodgers, and he retired 27 guys in a row. After Milner, Milner got the hit.
Yes.
Royce then retired 27 Reds in a row, but he didn't get a no-hitter. He didn't get a shutout. He won the game, I think, but it was the most amazing thing. It was just, it's just so funny with baseball. You never know what's going to happen, but I'll never forget that. I was like, wow, that he's getting everybody out. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I just loved. He became my favorite player. He was very good, very fast, and he signed my autograph. But when he left, my favorite player became Ken Griffey Jr. And that was only because he decided to come back to Cincinnati. I felt like he could go anywhere he wanted to, but he came back home. And, and of course, he wasn't as quote unquote great as he was in Seattle, as far as the other fans were concerned. And I did not care. I'm like, he could have went anywhere and he came home. So I always appreciated him for that. And one of my favorite experiences with Ken Griffey Jr., it was when Brandon Phillips was about to make the 30-30 club for the first time. And it was a businessman special. I had taken off of work and had some girlfriends with me, and I was sitting in the scout section, so down there right behind the home plate. And I was just rattling off, come on, Brandon. He was up at bat. Brandon, you could do it. 30-30. You could do it. And just in my element. And then I felt someone looking at me, and Ken Griffey Jr. was in the on deck circle, and he was looking at me, and I was like, oh, Griffey, and threw up my hand and waved, and he gave me a head nod. And I was like, did you guys see that? Did you see that? Griffey Jr. just spoke to me. And of course, I'm there with a few girlfriends, and they weren't into baseball. They were like, what are you talking about? And the man sitting behind me says, I saw it. I said, thank you. Thank you. I got a witness. I said, Griffey just spoke to me. So I got a head nod for Griffey Jr., during the game. So that was one of the highlights of that season for me as well. But loved Griffey for coming back. And then I had to love Castellanos. You could sort of get a trend, although George is my all-time favorite player because he was true, my first favorite player growing up. But Castellanos, when he was here in the city, and my season tickets were out in right field. And so I was out there, and I'm always out there early, and I'm out there, and I had the legend t-shirt on for Castellanos, and I'm up about 15, 20 rows, and I'm yelling, I'm like, Nick, throw me the ball. And he threw the ball up, and I caught it, and he clapped. I think he was amazed. He's like, this gray-haired woman actually caught a ball, and I was like, yes. And so, I was done. I was like, I could care less whether we won or lost after that. I'm like, Nick threw me the ball, and I caught it. It was pretty awesome there.
In all of the hundreds of games I've gone to, I've never gotten a foul ball. I never had a player throw me a ball. I've come kind of close a couple of times, but it's just one of those things that, It's not for lack of trying. And now I'm at the age where I would feel sort of, if I caught one, I feel like I'd have to hand it off to a kid somewhere. It's just, you're just too old to,
I know. Jack, the remedy for that, and I do this now. Nick threw me that ball, and like I said, that was only a few years ago. The first foul ball I ever got, and I sort of felt bad, but I got over it. Okay, it was a true foul ball, and the stands weren't full, and so I had to run a little bit to get it. And so it's down underneath the seat, and I'm down underneath there, and there's a little kid down there. Well, he wasn't, I was sort of small when this happened. I wasn't, as big as I am now, but he was probably 12. So he wasn't a real little kid. So we were wrestling for the ball, and I came up with it, and I told the kid, and I was like, I've been waiting like 34 years to get a ball. You still got time.
That's right. You got time. That's good.
And he wasn't a real little kid, but now I feel bad. And so what I do, I carry an extra ball, because if I can get a foul ball, I'm going to give him the one I have in my bag. I'll give it to that little kid. I'm like, look, depending on who hit it, I need this ball, but I do carry extra balls in my bag now, just in case, I get the real foul balls.
You don't wear a glove. You don't wear a glove to the game, do you?
No, I don't. I probably need to, but that'll be my excuse when I don't catch it, on the fly. I was like, if I had my glove, I could have caught it.
There's something about my son Ben just thinks any adult who brings a glove to a game is just sort of, he can't deal with that. He just can't deal with that.
I can't either, Jack. Barb, you mentioned you're a season ticket holder. How long have you been a season ticket holder?
I've actually only been a season ticket holder since 2020, COVID, the year after COVID.
Okay.
And that's only because and I'm a partial season ticket holder. If I had full season tickets, I would never get anything done. I would be down at the stadium for every single game, and my business would go under. So I've only been a season ticket holder since about 2020, 19 or 20, to ensure that I would get in when they weren't opening it up, for everyone. I did get my cutout. My cutout made it down, the year I couldn't be there. But like I said, I've been going since I've been 7. I've missed only one opening day since I started going to opening day at 16. And I've only missed one opening day, and that was the first year that Great American was open. But I'm at every opening day. It should be a national holiday in Cincinnati. I don't understand why it's not. And I attend 30 to 40 games a year.
You're a true fan,
White House. Barb. When you were at the White House, did you happen to mention to maybe the president or anybody that they really ought to declare opening day a national holiday?
I tried to, but the funniest part about when I went to the White House, I almost didn't go because it was December 6th, I think, or December 7th, and it was Reds Fest. And so when they invited me to the White House, I'm like, that's Reds Fest. Do they not know that I can't miss Reds Fest? And I actually initially declined going to the White House for about 4 or 5 hours after I got the call with the invite, because I'm like, it's Reds Fest. I'm not missing Reds Fest. I'm like, and I was thinking, okay, Barb, focus a little bit, okay? And actually, it took someone knocking me in the head, like, if you don't call them back and accept this invitation, I'm going to knock you out. And I thought about it, and I was like, okay, I guess I got to miss Reds Fest to go to the White House. So I did sort of mention that to him, like, yeah, I had a very important engagement, but, I let you know.
You mentioned it was Reds Fest. I mean, I'm sure the guy on the other line must have thought, what in the world? She's declining our invitation?
Had no clue, of course, because they're not from Cincinnati. They had no clue. They're thinking, we want her up here talking about this, representing businesses, like, okay, I don't know, but yeah. So I didn't get an opportunity to, tell them it needed to be a holiday, but when I was there, it was Reds Fest, so I did let them know, and, and then I sort of reeled it back in,
Barb, did you go to the All-Star game in 2015?
I was on the square. Well, let me think about that. I was on the square for the home run derby. I was at the All-Star game, yes. But I was on the square for the home run derby, watching it on the big screen. And I was watching it with my sons. I was supposed to watch it with both my sons. And my youngest son was late. And because he was late, somebody was standing outside the stadium and gave him, a few tickets to get in with his friends. And so instead of meeting me and my older son on the square, he was like, "You're not going to believe what happened." I'm like in there, and we're like, you get rewarded for being late. That's not the lesson I want to teach them, but I was at the All-Star game, yes, that watched, but I remember, Frazier and the home run derby on the square. It was so electrifying,
Yeah,
to
it
be
really
down
was.
there just in that outfit.
I remember that because I was down there and he hit, he won the home run contest.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a friend in Mount Adams who claimed he could hear the crowd up in Mount Adams,
I believe
which is
it.
a good distance away for people not from Cincinnati. That's pretty far away.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah.
They probably heard me from the square though too.
That's
What
fantastic.
are some of you other than okay? So you got the ball from Castellanos, you got Milner to give you an autograph, you got your flag,
In the head nod from Griffey Jr.
a head nod from Griffey Jr. Are there any other like special moments that you particularly remember from attending games either at Riverfront or GABP?
All of them are special. I would say the most recent one, I was down there when De La Cruz hit for the cycle.
Oh,
That
wow.
was so electrifying. It wasn't even believable. I mean, it was, he's up there. He needed the triple. And it was like, oh my gosh, the energy in the stadium was just unreal. And it brought everybody together, which the team is bringing everybody back together, and it's fun, to be in the stadium. But being there watching Ellie hit for the cycle, it was just unreal. Everybody was embracing everybody. Everybody was friends. It was just so awesome, and to see it unfold. That was just so exciting. I mean, I've had many, 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 I know, good experiences, but that was the last one that just was like, this is wow.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about sports. It brings us all together. They say in the newspaper that we're a very divided country, but you wouldn't know it if you went to a sporting event.
Absolutely.
Where people are high-fiving each other. We don't know each other's politics. We don't know what we think, but we're all having a great time. And that's the great thing about sports.
It is. And I go to the games a lot by myself, and my friends, because not everybody is into baseball. I still count them as friends, but not all of them are into baseball. And I'll go at the drop of a hat. And they were like, "You're down there by yourself?" And I'm like, "No, I'm down here with like 20,000 of my closest friends," because that's what it's like. If they're really down there, you can talk baseball, you can enjoy the game, and it's exciting. That's one of the wonderful things about Cincinnati. And I have been down there, and I was down there probably for another businessman special, and someone had just came in. They were following their team. I think we were playing the Angels actually, and he was there, and he was like, "I didn't realize how pretty Cincinnati was." And I told him, excuse me, and I told him, I said, yes. And he was like, "This is great." I mean, we formed a little friendship. I said, "Come on back. Let me know when you're coming. My season tickets are right here, and, get around here." But it was just, baseball brings people together, and Cincinnati is such a welcoming stadium. The true fans that are down there. We'll talk baseball with anybody, and, and it's just inviting. And I just love it. I just absolutely love it. And when I go to the game by myself, but I really am never at the game by myself. Whoever I'm sitting around, if they're a real fan, I got a new buddy for 9 innings.
Speaking of Cincinnati and how welcoming the fans are to people from out of town and such, have you had the chance to see the Reds in other cities?
I have seen them. I'm also a Rosie Red, and so I took my first bus tour 2 years ago, and so I got to see the Reds and the Cubs, the Reds and the Brewers, and so that was really nice being in those two stadiums. That's my ultimate bucket list, is to travel 1 year with the Reds, everywhere the Reds go, to be able to watch them play. I've been in other stadiums when the Reds aren't playing, been to San Diego and Atlanta and Washington, but the Reds weren't playing there. So just being at the Cubs game and the Brewers game, which I will say they won both of those. So that was pretty awesome as well. And that was just, I said they should take me everywhere because obviously I was a good luck charm, but I haven't done that. But that is my ultimate bucket list, is to be able to travel the Reds schedule one year.
How are the fans? How are the fans at Wrigley and in Miller Park?
They were actually, the ones at Wrigley were really good. The ones at Miller Park, they were surprisingly, they were scummy.
Oh, really?
They were scummy, yeah. And I was really shocked. And you're talking about, as far as the ball, taking the ball from a little kid. So, of course, I was with the Rosie Reds group, and we were sitting behind the Reds dugout, up a little bit. And so we were yelling, at our Reds players and everything. And I forget who it was, but they were coming in and they were always trying to throw the ball up to our section. And so one woman was about to get the ball, and some man, and he knew, because they were throwing the ball up just about every inning trying to get it to someone in our section. And he grabbed it from her and would give it to her, and was nasty about it. It was like, you gotta go back to Cincinnati or whatever the case may be. And we're like, really? So they weren't real welcoming, at least where we were sitting at.
I think it's tremendous that the Reds coming off the field would try to throw the ball in the Rosie Red section. That's pretty impressive. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
We were pretty loud. We were pretty loud, Randy. So we made our presence known.
Do the Rosie Reds wear uniforms or anything? Or
No, not when we're traveling. I mean, there's a lot of Rosie Red gear, and we tried to wear Rosie Red gear, but pretty much it's just Reds gear. We were not all dressed alike. We were all different colors, red or white, black, you name it. So it wasn't, like, okay, it was a whole section when you have a team of little leaguers when they're all in the same uniform. But we're loud.
I think a lot of people don't realize that you can be a male and be a member of the Rosie Reds.
Absolutely.
It started as a female organization back in the 60s, I know.
It did.
I did not realize that. You learn something new on this podcast constantly, and
it's amazing, Jack. I tell you, this podcast provides more educational value to people than they realize.
I think that's right. And
it's reasonably priced, I think, and they give you some benefits, right, Barb? A couple tickets or something.
It is. It's only $35 a year, and it went up from, I think it was $20 when I first started. And yes, you get to be in the pool to get opening day tickets. You get 1 or 2 free games a year. You're able to. They do group rate opportunities at the ballpark, and they take you have the opportunity to take a bus trip and just do different things. It's an all-in type of organization. You can be part of the parade, on opening day parade, and just different things. You could be as involved as you want to be. There's a lot of different things. They volunteer at the stadium a lot, doing with the marketing department, taking surveys. I did that a couple of years. Loved it, because you're able to ask, some of the players, why are you here? Or some of the fans, what makes you come? How many games do you attend? And just to hear the voice, that I love that part of it when the Rosie Reds got to do that. But it's a great organization. And like you're saying, Jack, I didn't know I could be a part of it. And if I'm allowed to say it on this podcast, like I said, I grew up with the Reds, and I thought the Rosie Reds were blue-haired white women. That's what I thought they were.
Kind of what I thought too, actually. But now that you mention it, I think my daughter's a member of the Rosie, and I think she did it as much as anything to get in the pool for the opening day tickets, I think.
Right. But, right. That's worth it by itself. But then once she gets involved, they do a lot of good. They support a lot of nonprofit organizations and the Kid Club and different things like that. So it's a way to be around people that are Reds fans.
Absolutely.
And Jack and Barb, you may Rosie Red.
Mm-hmm.
But do we know what Rosie stands for? ROSIE.
Brooders organized to stimulate interest and enthusiasm in the Reds.
Again, this is the most educational episode that we've had.
We could probably get CLE credit for this, Jack.
There you go.
I think that's right.
little fun fact, Jack, they were also organized in the 60s when the Reds were threatening to move to San Diego, of all places.
Okay.
And so a few females got together and made a rooters organization and helped keep them in Cincinnati. But anyway, we digress. Barb, listen, you're probably qualified to be the general manager of the Reds. So I'm wondering if there's any particular trades or transactions they made that you were either really happy or really sad about during your career as a Reds fan.
My most memorable, and that's why I'm just a fan. I'm a fan. I have fan favorites, and I'm going to root for us whether we win or lose. So I hate to see anybody go that's given 150%. But, of course we want to win. But I get tied to my players, and they're all my children at this point. I'm old enough that I consider they're all my boys. They're all my children. But one of the trades I remember that, and the reason it sticks with me, my youngest son, who's a lefty and a pitcher, when we traded, I believe it was Dimitri Young for Bronson Arroyo. And Bronson Arroyo came to Cincinnati. He pitched. He hit a home run the first game he pitched and made my son, who was probably 6, love the Reds as much as I did. That was and he got a Bronson Arroyo jersey, and he started pitching, all through Little League and everything like that. So Dimitri, and I believe it was Dimitri Young, that we traded Bronson for, which was one of a fan favorites, always hustling and everything. So I was sorry to see him go, and it's we got this pitcher, but Bronson Arroyo he's just phenomenal. He's somebody you got to root for on and off the field. He was such a, asset for the Reds. And so for us getting him, and then the impact he had on my son, really embracing baseball and wanting to pitch and, kicking his leg up. I mean, just the whole 9 yards. So I love that trade. That's the one that sticks out because that was when my son's eyes lit up for himself. I always dragged him to the games, but, and they loved going. But that's when I think baseball, when he really was I can do this too. So
that was a great trade. It was, I will correct you. It was Willie Mo Pena.
Willie Mo Pena. There you go.
They traded for Bronson, but,
thank you.
Willie Mo just never quite, when he connected, the ball went a long way, but his problem was connecting was a little bit of a struggle. So that was one of the best trades. I really think that's one of the best trades in Reds history to get Bronson Arroyo for as good as he was, for as long as he was, for really not giving up too much. So I love Bronson. I met him one time I went to LaSalle High School, and he was there for the LaSalle Stag, and I started playing guitar a few years ago, so I started asking him about guitar playing, and he was just great. I mean, it was I think he really kind of enjoyed it. I was somebody here who didn't want to talk about baseball for a change, so it was great. But he could not have been a nicer guy, and I think he does a lot for the Reds, and good man.
He does. He does a lot for the community fund, Barb, and I think your favorite player, George Foster, does a lot for the Reds Community Fund.
Yes. Yeah.
And
I've gotten to meet George now. So that was, I think when I met him, I think I said my name was Barb. I didn't know. I was I'm actually talking to George Foster. Who knows what I said when I got a
Hey, Barb, as I mentioned before, you're on the Community Fund board, and I know you were involved in the construction of the Roosevelt or the Cleveland Parker Field. Could you tell us a little bit about that, your involvement, and why it's so special to you?
And I got involved with the Reds Community Fund. Of course, I knew Charlie Frank a long time before. We both went to Walnut Hills, and I was part of Knothole Baseball. And at the time that the Reds Community Fund really was picking up steam, getting started, they wanted to revitalize baseball in the inner city. And so by me being connected with Knothole Baseball, with the inner city leagues there, the neighborhoods, that's how I got involved with the Reds Community Fund. And so it was just a natural attraction, and natural synergies. We're doing baseball in the inner city through Knothole, and here were the Reds and the Reds Community Fund trying to revitalize baseball in the inner city. So that was a natural connection where baseball was losing out in as far as in the African American community to football and basketball, because all you need is a basketball and a rim, and you can go play basketball. You got a football and pavement or grass, and you can play football. But with baseball, you need bats and cleats and gloves to really have a game. And so the inner city children, didn't have the means and to be able to have a pickup game of baseball. And so for the Reds Community Fund to want to revitalize baseball in the inner city, that was just natural. And I got behind that 150%. Of course, Charlie is phenomenal. Everyone at the Reds Community Fund is phenomenal with energizing the inner city and getting them excited about baseball. And baseball, like I said, is just a wonderful sport. It's a great sport, and it's an affordable sport as far as the Reds have made it affordable to go down to the games and have a good family environment. And so it was just natural for me to be a part of the Reds Community Fund. I thank Charlie day in, day out for allowing me to be an active part and be on the board. Because what they're doing now with the Reds Community Fund is not just baseball and softball. It's, changing lives, which is near and dear. I grew up in the inner city, still live in the inner city. And so it's in my backyard. And so what the Reds Community Fund is doing to bring through baseball and softball, letting them know that you have a team right here in the city that cares about you, and it's your team. And it's more than just baseball and softball. It's the individuals. And like we've been talking about tonight, it's an atmosphere, it's a community. Baseball brings people together. And I love the Reds Community Fund and what they're doing. And so it was just a natural synergy for me to get involved. And, I'll stay involved whether I'm on the board or not. What they're doing is, they're changing the community and they're changing lives.
What was your involvement with Knothole Baseball?
I was actually, I became one of the district supervisors. I started out as assistant district supervisor, and actually the Cleveland Parker ball field that you were mentioning earlier, I worked underneath Cleveland Parker and Fred Carnes. They ran districts 1, 8, and 11. And unfortunately, Cleve was tragically killed in his home by a stray bullet back in 2012. And so I took over his position and ran the Knothole District 1, 8, and 11, which were the inner city neighborhoods, and kept baseball alive in our communities for over 12 years. I was doing that.
And that field was dedicated. That field, I think, is in Avondale, right?
Correct. It's in Avondale. Yes. It used to be the old Blair field, CRC field.
Yeah. I umpire some baseball games from time to time, and I've actually umpired at that field.
Yeah.
And I don't think I knew, I didn't realize the history behind it.
And actually, Cleve was, unfortunately, with his home literally was on Cleveland Avenue, I believe is the one that runs parallel with that.
It's right there.
Looks at the field. Yes, that's where he was shot, and he died at the hospital, but he was shot there in his home, looking out at that field.
A stray home run ball might have hit his house, because exactly. I think that's right behind right field.
It is.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly where it's at. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Well, Jack, what do you think?
I think this is great. Barb, thank you for everything you're doing for the community fund, and I think it's a real gem in our city and quite a testament to the Reds organization that they get behind and support that. So we thank you very much, and it's been just a delight talking to you about some of your memories. And I hadn't thought about Eddie Milner in a long time. So
I could have threw out Wayne Krenchicki too, because he gave you an autograph. But
Barb, you might be the biggest Reds fan I know, and I will tell you, occasionally I wander down there by myself too. And it's kind of like eating lunch by yourself. You feel kind of funny sometimes when you're eating lunch by yourself. So if you ever need a pal to go down to the ballpark, you give me a shout. I'll be glad to go down there with you. I'm 10 or 15 minutes away, so I can go on a moment's notice.
There you go. I will do that, Randy. And I'm still the fan that I'm down there when the gates open.
I have run into you a few times down there. I know that. We always give each other a big hug. So, well, Barb, thank you very much. We run up against the clock. And I wish we had another hour to talk, and maybe we'll be back on the podcast someday.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Great meeting you, Jack. Thank you for letting me know it was Willie Mopena and not Dimitri Young.
Well,
But I know it was Bronson. Okay.
no disrespect to
Oh
Dimitri. That's
no! Like I
very
said, I
important.
wasn't sure. I wasn't
Love
sure. I just
Dimitri.
knew we got Bronson. So my hair is gray for it's a podcast. You can't see me, but my hair is gray. So thanks for for letting me.
Jack is our resident fact checker on this podcast.
Awesome.
So he's always there ready to correct somebody.
Right. That's
Usually
right.
me. Usually me.
Randy.
Bronson hit a home run his first game, though, didn't he? When he first pitched, didn't he hit a home run?
That's right. Okay. Yeah, he sure did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember that.
Awesome, Barb. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Standing ovation. Just like a Willie Mopena home run.
Few and far between.
Cincinnati, what a team, what a team, what a team. 280, how they scream, how they scream, how they scream.